The wind echoed through the abandoned barns, swirling dead leaves around my feet. The old wood creaked under my touch, and I stared up at the faded planks above me. This place was supposed to be empty, just like everyone had told me. Yet there was something in the way the wind shifted, a lingering scent of wood smoke, the feeling of being watched. It whispered to me, just as it had to my grandmother all those years ago, "There's something here, something important." I adjusted my pack, feeling the weight of my purpose settle onto my shoulders. I had come seeking answers, but I wasn't prepared for what this lonely ranch would reveal. My grandmother, Martha May, had grown up in these parts. When her time came to move into the nursing home, she left behind a few boxes filled with belongings and a whole lot of memories. One memory in particular had stuck with me: the story of a man named Silas Blackwood. Silas owned this ranch, or he had, but one day he vanished. There were rumors that he'd lost his mind, others that he'd done something terrible. But the most popular tale was the one my grandmother told me. The night before Silas disappeared, he'd had a fight with some men from the city. Developers, they were called. They wanted his land, but Silas wouldn't sell. So they threatened to take it from him, to steal it away. And somehow they had, leaving him no choice but to run, to hide. That's why the front door to his house hung off its hinges, why the place was abandoned, why no one had laid eyes on him in decades. Or so the story went. It was just a story my grandmother had always said. When I told her I was going to look for him, she shook her head, warning me about chasing ghosts. But I knew in my bones there was more to this story than anyone had ever imagined. And as I stood before the decaying facade of the Blackwood Ranch, I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As darkness fell, the wind picked up, whipping my hair across my face and carrying with it the distant sound of thunder. The sky mirrored the turmoil within me, uncertain of the path ahead. Suddenly a noise from inside the ranch startled me, a thump followed by a soft curse. Had I imagined it, or was someone really here? Fear pricked at my skin, but curiosity burned brighter. Who else would have found their way to this abandoned place? I tested the doorknob, surprised to find the door unlocked. Hesitantly, I stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through grimy windows, illuminating a room frozen in time. An old wood stove sat in the corner, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the hearth. A rocking chair was pulled up beside it as though waiting for someone to return. The air was stale, but not empty. It held the ghost of a recent presence, a lingering warmth. I wasn't alone. My pulse quickened, and I called out, my voice echoing in the stillness. "Hello? Is anyone there?" No answer came, but I could feel eyes watching me from the shadows. Then I heard it again, a creak on the stairs followed by heavy footsteps. My heart hammered against my ribs as I turned to flee. But before I could reach the door, a tall figure emerged from the darkness. He moved with a slow grace belying his age, his face etched with lines that spoke of hard living and harder truths. His eyes, a startling blue against the weathered brown of his skin, held a mixture of surprise and caution. Time seemed to stop, and I could only stare as he stepped into the dim light, revealing a strong jawline and a shock of silver hair that hinted at a wild spirit that refused to be tamed. "Who are you?" His voice was a gravelly whisper, as though unused for years. But there was a hint of steel in his tone that belied his gentle features. Startled, I stumbled over my words, trying to explain my presence. But as I did, a sudden clap of thunder shook the house. The windows rattled, and the old man flinched. In that instant, I saw a flicker of fear cross his face, quickly replaced by a stoic calm. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his gaze unwavering. Before I could respond, he turned and headed for the door, beckoning for me to follow. We walked in silence, the crunch of my boots on the wooden floor echoing between us. As we reached the porch, he paused, turning back to face me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "Why did you come here?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, yet somehow managing to cut through the howling wind. His question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, I found my voice. "Because I needed answers," I replied, meeting his gaze. "Answers to questions that have haunted me for a long time." I hesitated, wondering if I should press further, but the look on his face, a mixture of pain and resignation, held me back. In that moment, I sensed that some wounds are too deep to be probed, some secrets too heavy to bear. As if reading my thoughts, he sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "Some things," he said, his voice raspy with emotion, "are best left buried in the past." He looked away, his gaze drifting to the horizon as if searching for something beyond the confines of our small clearing. "The past is never truly buried," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "It lives within us, shaping us whether we remember it or not." We stood there for a long time, two solitary figures bound by an invisible thread of shared history. The wind whipped around us, carrying with it the scent of rain and the whisper of forgotten stories. Finally, the old man turned back to me, his eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored my own. "You should go," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "There's nothing here for you." I knew he was right, but I couldn't bring myself to leave just yet. There was something about this place, about him, that held me captive. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Though I knew he would never let me, I couldn't resist the urge to try. A shadow of a smile touched his lips, and for a moment I saw a glimmer of the man he once was, strong, proud, full of life. "Thank you," he said softly, his gaze distant, "but there is no helping me. My story is over." Overcome with a sudden surge of empathy, I reached out to touch his arm, only to pull back when he flinched. At my touch, realizing my presumption, his reaction was so painful to witness. I could see the torment etched into every line on his face, the defeat in his posture. In that instant, I knew that whatever had happened to him, whatever story lay buried in this abandoned ranch, it had broken him in ways that ran deeper than any wound I could see. And with that realization came an overwhelming sense of empathy. How could I help a man whose pain transcended time itself? What solace could I offer to a soul that had known such profound loss? I stood there contemplating the unfathomable weight of his sorrow, knowing that some scars run deeper than skin, some burdens heavier than flesh and bone. As the final rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the decaying ranch, I knew it was time to go. Whatever Silas Blackwood's story may be, it was clear that this place held nothing but echoes of a life long gone. I offered him a final, hesitant smile. "Take care," I whispered, my voice catching in my throat. In response, he nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a lifetime of regret. With a last lingering glance, I turned and walked away, leaving him to the ghosts of his past. The lonely rancher was a study in contrasts. The shack itself was crumbling, yet oddly maintained. Faded roses still climbed the porch steps, as if striving for a beauty that time had forgotten. Then there was the collection of vintage cars, each a testament to a time when the road ahead was filled with promise. Classic models with names like Thunderbird and Bel Air, their chrome gleaming faintly in the fading light. It was almost surreal, as if the owner had simply vanished, leaving his dreams suspended in midair. But it was the interior that held the strongest echoes of life lived and lost. The walls were adorned with countless photos, each one a fresh wound to the heart. Children playing, families gathered, lovers embracing, a lifetime of memories frozen in time. Every image a stark reminder of the joys that once filled these rooms, making the present silence all the more deafening. It was almost unbearable to witness this frozen tableau of happiness invaded by the relentless march of time. The cake on the counter, still frosted, a cruel joke played by fate. The half-read book lying open. The ink from the pages mingling with the dust motes dancing in the lone shaft of sunlight piercing the boarded-up window. Everywhere I looked, I saw remnants of a life forcefully interrupted, a narrative abruptly halted, leaving me to piece together the fragments of a story that refused to stay buried. As I stepped back into the harsh glare of reality, I was acutely aware of the contrast between then and now. Where laughter had echoed, there was only the hollow ring of emptiness. Where hopes and dreams had soared, there was now the chilling grip of despair. The air itself seemed thick with unanswered questions, each room a locked chamber holding secrets that time itself couldn't erase. The lonely rancher's story was indelibly etched into these four walls, a haunting reminder that some wounds refuse to heal, some losses refuse to fade, and some loves refuse to die.